The Great Hall of Harmony 7 sparkled with lights from 1,000 different worlds. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood near the viewing window, watching ships arrive from every corner of the galaxy. Today marked 15 years since the Treaty of Thousand Suns had been signed. 15 years of peace that she had worked so hard to build. Sarah wore the simple blue uniform of Earth's diplomatic service. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat style, and her face showed the calm expression she had practiced for decades. Around her, aliens of every shape and size celebrated. Some had scales, others had fur, and many had forms that humans still found strange to look at. But today they all gathered in friendship. The Vortan delegates stood in the corner, their tall bodies covered in gray armor plates. Their faces looked like ancient earth lizards, with yellow eyes that seemed to judge everything they saw. Emperor Krolix himself had come for this celebration. His massive form towered over everyone else, and jewels decorated his armor. He had signed the treaty 15 years ago, promising peace between his empire and all other worlds. Sarah remembered that day clearly. The Vortan Empire had conquered dozens of species before humans arrived in space. When humanity made first contact 200 years ago, they had found a galaxy that was not kind to the weak. The Vortans controlled vast territories and commanded fleets that darkened the stars. But Sarah and other diplomats had worked carefully, building alliances and creating agreements. Slowly they had convinced the Vortans that peace was better than endless war. Ambassador Chen, a voice said beside her. It was Ambassador to Kresh from the Quill Collective, a being that looked like a walking collection of crystals. Your people should be proud. This peace exists because of human effort. Sarah smiled politely. Peace exists because everyone chose it, Ambassador. We just helped show the path. But even as she spoke, Sarah noticed something wrong. The Vortan guards were moving into new positions. Their weapons, which should have been ceremonial, looked ready for actual use. Her diplomatic training made her notice these small details. Something felt off. The ceremony began. Representatives from hundreds of worlds stepped forward to speak about peace and cooperation. Sarah listened but kept watching the Vortans. Emperor Krolix stared at her with those yellow eyes, and his mouth curved into what might have been a smile. When it was time for the Vortan Emperor to speak, he walked to the center platform. The crowd grew quiet. His voice boomed through the hall, translated instantly into every language. 15 years ago I signed a paper, Krolix said. Your Galactic Council called it a treaty. My advisors told me to respect human diplomacy. They said these newcomers to space had wisdom. He paused and his smile grew wider. I have decided they were wrong. Sarah's heart began to beat faster. Around her, other delegates looked confused. This was not the speech they expected. Today I have a message for humanity, the Emperor continued. Your colonies in the outer territories sit on worlds that rightfully belong to the Vortan Empire. We claimed them 1,000 years before your species learned to make fire, and now I am taking them back. A large screen appeared behind him. It showed 3 human colonies from space. New Haven with its silver domes, Liberty Station orbiting a gas giant, Paradise Valley, where human farmers had grown food for 50 years. Sarah recognized them all. She had visited each one, met the families who lived there, attended the birth celebrations and memorial services. These 3 settlements have been removed, Krolix said. The screens changed. Sarah saw fire falling from the sky. She saw the domes of New Haven crack open, exposing people to the deadly atmosphere. She saw Liberty Station explode in a ball of flame. She saw Paradise Valley burn as orbital weapons struck the farms. The hall erupted in chaos. Delegates screamed and shouted. Some ran for exits. Others stood frozen in shock. Sarah felt her legs go weak, but she forced herself to remain standing. Her mind raced with calculations. 3 million people had lived in those colonies. 3 million human lives gone in minutes. The Galactic Council representatives rushed to the center platform. Chancellor Vornis, a floating jellyfish-like creature, spoke in a trembling voice. Emperor Krolix, this is a violation of every law we have established. The Council demands nothing, Krolix interrupted. The Vortan Empire takes what it wishes. The treaty was worthless paper signed by primitives who thought words could stop power. Let this be a lesson to all species. The weak do not dictate terms to the strong. All eyes turned to Sarah. She stood perfectly still, her face showing no emotion. Inside, a storm raged. Images of the colonists she had known flashed through her mind. Children she had met, scientists who had shown her their research, farmers who had invited her to dinner. All dead. The Chancellor floated toward her. Ambassador Chen, please, we must respond with calm. The Council will mediate this situation. We will find a peaceful solution. Violence only creates more violence. Surely you understand. Sarah held up one hand and the Chancellor fell silent. The entire hall watched her. Some expected her to cry. Others expected her to beg for help. The older species knew that humans were young in space. Barely 2 centuries since first contact. They had always seemed so eager for peace, so willing to compromise. Sarah looked at Emperor Krolix. She looked at the screens, still showing the burning colonies. She looked at the council members who called for calm while 3 million of her people lay dead. Then she checked her watch and stood silently for exactly 60 seconds. She wanted to make sure every translator in the hall could catch up, so every species would hear her words clearly. When 60 seconds passed, Sarah spoke. Her voice was quiet, but somehow everyone heard it. You have made a grave miscalculation. That was all she said. Then she turned and walked toward the exit. Her footsteps echoed in the silent hall. Ambassador Chen, the Chancellor called. Where are you going? We must discuss this. The Council can help. Sarah did not stop walking. She did not look back. Behind her, she heard the Emperor laugh, a deep rumbling sound that echoed off the walls. Run back to Earth, little diplomat. Krolix shouted. Tell your leaders that their words mean nothing. Tell them the Vorten Empire is coming for more of your worlds, and know that there is nothing you can do to stop us. Sarah reached the door to her ship's dock. Her security team waited there, their faces grim. They had seen the broadcast too. They knew what had happened. Ambassador, one of them asked. What are our orders? Sarah looked at them. These men and women had protected her for years. They had stood quietly while she negotiated and made speeches about peace. They had never complained, never questioned. But now she saw something different in their eyes. They were waiting for her to say the words. She pulled out her communication device and opened a secure channel to Earth's Central Command. The encryption was military grade, far beyond what a normal diplomat would use. She entered a code that had not been used in 200 years. Protocol Omega, Sarah said into the device. Unmask the truth. On the other end of the line, after a long pause, a voice responded. Confirmed. Protocol Omega is active. The masks are coming off. Sarah closed the channel and looked at her security team. Get us back to Earth. Fast. And send a message to every human colony, every station, every ship. Tell them the long sleep is over. It's time to wake up. As her ship undocked from Harmony 7, Sarah stood at the window and watched the station grow smaller. Behind her, the Galactic Council was still debating, still calling for peaceful solutions. The Emperor was probably celebrating his victory. They would all learn soon enough. Humanity had tried peace for 15 years. They had been patient. They had been kind. They had been understanding. That time was finished. Sarah's ship took 3 days to reach Earth. During that time, the galaxy buzzed with news of the Vortan attack. Most species expressed shock and sympathy. Some sent messages of support to humanity, but none offered military help. The Vortan Empire was too powerful, too old, too established. Going against them was suicide. The Galactic Council held emergency sessions. They passed resolutions condemning the attacks. They formed committees to investigate. They scheduled debates about sanctions. Sarah ignored all of it. She had spent 15 years learning that the Council loved to talk but hated to act. As her ship approached Earth, Sarah remembered her real past. The past that no one in the galaxy knew about. 40 years ago, Sarah had not been a diplomat. She had been Admiral Sarah Chen, commander of Earth's Third Fleet. Back then, humanity was still new to the galactic community. They had built their first faster-than-light ships only 50 years before that. When they met other species, they found a galaxy that was not kind. The Vortan Empire ruled through force. The Quill Collective stayed safe by hiding in asteroid fields. The methane breathers survived by living in places others could not reach. Dozens of species had gone extinct in the last 1,000 years, conquered and absorbed by stronger powers. Earth's leaders had made a decision. They would not be another extinct species, but they also would not announce themselves as a military threat. Instead, they would play a long game. They would pretend to be peaceful, idealistic newcomers while they prepared in secret. Sarah had helped design the strategy. Human diplomats would seek peace and build alliances. They would appear naive and trusting. Meanwhile, Earth would build weapons, train soldiers, and create defenses that could stand against anyone. Every human colony had two purposes: the visible purpose that everyone could see, and the hidden purpose underneath. New Haven's domes had contained farms and homes, yes, but underground, massive factories had built warship components. Liberty Station had been a trading hub, but its core had housed weapons research labs. Paradise Valley had grown food, but the farmers had all been military veterans maintaining underground missile silos. Every human merchant ship that traveled the trade routes carried hidden weapons. Every civilian station had military-grade shields. Every diplomat like Sarah had served in the military first. They genuinely wanted peace, but they were never helpless. Sarah's ship landed at Geneva Spaceport. A car waited to take her to Central Command, buried deep under the Swiss mountains. As she rode through the city, she saw things changing. Recruitment posters appeared on walls. News broadcasts showed military parades instead of civilian programs. The face that humanity had shown the galaxy for 200 years was being removed. At Central Command, the Defense Council waited for her. General Marcus Webb stood at the head of the table, his old face lined with scars from the early exploration days. Around him sat the other commanders, men and women who had pretended to be retired while they secretly prepared for this day. Admiral Chen, General Webb said, using her old rank. "Welcome home." Sarah took her seat. It felt strange to be called Admiral again after so many years of being ambassador. But it also felt right. "Status report?" she asked. General Webb activated a holographic display showing human space. Green dots marked their territories. Red dots showed Vortan positions. Protocol Omega is in full effect. All colonies have revealed their military capabilities. Our hidden fleets are emerging from their construction facilities. We're ready to move on your order. A woman across the table spoke. Admiral Jackson, who had been posing as Earth's Minister of Agriculture. The Vortans think they destroyed 3 defenseless colonies. They don't know that we evacuated 98% of the population before their attack. Our early warning systems detected their fleet 6 hours before they struck. Sarah felt a weight lift from her chest. 3 million people had not died. Most of them were safe, but she kept her face calm. "How many casualties?" 60,000, Admiral Jackson said quietly. Volunteers who stayed behind to make the attack look real. Scientists, soldiers, and others who knew the risks. They died buying us time and maintaining the deception. 60,000 lives. Sarah closed her eyes for a moment. Those volunteers had sacrificed everything so that humanity would not be caught unprepared. She would remember them. "What about our assets?" she asked. Another officer spoke up. Commander Hayes, who had been Earth's chief trade negotiator. "All trade ships have revealed their weapons. We have 300 vessels that the Vortans thought were cargo haulers. They're actually assault cruisers with advanced weaponry. Our colonies have deployed planetary defense grids that we've been hiding for decades. And our main battle fleet, which the galaxy thinks is only 50 ships, actually numbers 800. Sarah looked at the display. 200 years of preparation. 200 years of building in secret while pretending to be weak. Humanity had learned from history. They had studied every species that went extinct, every civilization that fell. They would not make the same mistakes. "There's more," General Webb said. He changed the display to show technology charts. "We've been reverse engineering every alien technology we could get. Vortan shields, quill weapons, breather engines. Then we improved them. Our ships are faster, our weapons hit harder, and our defenses are stronger than anything the Vortans have." Around the table, the commanders waited for Sarah's decision. She was not just a military leader. She was the face that the galaxy knew. She was the one who had tried peace. If she gave the order for war, humanity would follow. Sarah thought about the 15 years she had spent negotiating. She had genuinely believed in peace. She had worked hard to build trust and create understanding. The treaty had been real to her, not just a trick. But the Vortans had destroyed that peace. They had killed 60,000 people in a test of human resolve. They thought humanity would beg for mercy or hide behind the useless Galactic Council. "Deploy the fleets," Sarah said. "I'll take personal command of the first attack group. Our target is the Vortan forward base at Kelnar Station. We hit them fast and hard. Show them what happens when you mistake patience for weakness." The commanders nodded. They had been waiting 200 years for this moment. Over the next week, the galaxy watched in shock as humanity revealed its true strength. Ships that had been hauling cargo suddenly bristled with weapons. Colonies that had seemed defenseless deployed military forces that rivaled some species' entire armies. Space stations that had been simple trading posts became fortified battle platforms. The Galactic Council sent frantic messages to Sarah. They begged her to stop and negotiate. They promised sanctions against the Vortons. They offered mediators and peacekeepers. Sarah sent a single reply to all of them. You watched them execute 60,000 of my people and called for restraint. You have been calling for restraint for 15 years while the Vortons expanded and conquered. Your words are empty. We are beyond talking now. Emperor Krolix received reports of human military mobilization. At first he did not believe them. Humans were weak, idealistic newcomers who barely understood space warfare. His advisors assured him that even if humans had some hidden weapons, the Vorton Empire had been fighting wars for 1,000 years. He sent orders to his fleets. They would crush human space quickly, before the Galactic Council could interfere. The humans would learn their place and other species would remember not to challenge Vorton power. But Krolix had made his first mistake when he attacked the colonies. He was about to make his second mistake by underestimating what humanity had become. Sarah stood on the bridge of her flagship, the ECS Relentless. Around her, a fleet of 200 warships prepared for their first engagement. They were heading to Kelnar Station, the Vorton forward base that controlled the approaches to human space. Her tactical officer spoke. Admiral, we're approaching the target. Vorton sensors have detected us. They're launching their defense fleet. Sarah watched the display. 50 Vorton warships moved to intercept them. They flew in the traditional Vorton formation, designed to maximize honor in single combat. Each ship would seek out an enemy vessel and engage it directly. They still think this is going to be a traditional battle, Sarah said. Show them something new. Her fleet did not break into individual combat. Instead, they moved as one coordinated unit, focusing their firepower on one Vorton ship at a time. Within minutes, 10 Vorton vessels were destroyed. The rest tried to adapt, but they had been trained in the old ways. They did not know how to fight an enemy that worked together instead of seeking individual glory. The battle lasted 40 minutes. When it ended, the entire Vorton defense fleet was destroyed or captured. Sarah's forces took only light damage. They moved on to Kelnar Station itself, and the station surrendered without a fight. News of the battle spread instantly across the galaxy. The impossible had happened. Humanity, the peaceful newcomers, had just destroyed a Vorton fleet with barely any losses. Sarah broadcast a message from Kelnar Station. It went to every world in the galaxy in every language. For 15 years, we sought peace. We believed in diplomacy and cooperation. We built the treaty that brought stability to this galaxy. The Vorton Empire destroyed that peace. They murdered thousands of people to prove their power. Now they will learn that humanity is not weak. We are just patient. The news of humanity's victory at Kelnar Station changed everything. For 1,000 years, the Vorton Empire had been the strongest military power in the galaxy. Now in a single battle, humans had destroyed one of their fleets with ease. Emperor Krolix stood in his war room on Vorton Prime, staring at the tactical displays. His generals surrounded him, their scaled faces showing confusion and concern. They had never planned for an enemy like this. How did they hide this strength? General Thaxon demanded. Our intelligence reported that humans had maybe 50 warships. Now reports say they have hundreds. They lied to us, another general said. For 200 years they pretended to be weak while they built weapons in secret. Krolix slammed his fist on the table. Then we will show them that deception has consequences. Gather our main battle fleet. We will crush human space completely. Every colony, every station, every ship. They will regret making an enemy of the Vorton Empire. But even as he gave orders, Krolix felt uncertain. The humans at Kelnar had fought differently than any enemy he had known. They did not seek honor or glory. They simply won with brutal efficiency. Sarah's fleet did not stop at Kelnar Station. Over the next 2 weeks, they pushed deeper into Vorton territory. Every military outpost they encountered either surrendered or was destroyed. Human forces moved with coordinated precision, hitting multiple targets at once and never giving the Vortons time to organize proper defenses. The Galactic Council continued their emergency meetings. Chancellor Vornis called for both sides to cease fighting. Other species sent diplomatic messages, urging restraint and compromise. Some species that had been victims of Vortan expansion in the past quietly cheered humanity's success, but none dared to help openly. Sarah ignored all diplomatic requests. She stood on the bridge of the Relentless as her fleet approached another Vortan stronghold. Her second-in-command, Captain Rodriguez, stood beside her. "Admiral, we're receiving another message from the Council," he said. "They're threatening to impose sanctions if we don't stop our advance." Sarah almost laughed. "Sanctions? They'll impose sanctions on us, but they did nothing when the Vortans killed our people. Send them my standard reply." Captain Rodriguez nodded and moved away. Sarah knew what the message said because she had written it herself. "The time for words has passed. Humanity will accept nothing less than complete justice for the crimes committed against us." In her private moments, Sarah struggled with what she had become. She had spent 15 years as a diplomat, genuinely believing that peace was possible. She had met with Vortan officials, shared meals with them, and even considered some as friends. Now she was destroying their military and invading their territory. Her personal aide, Lieutenant Kim, found her one evening in her quarters. Sarah was looking at casualty reports from the latest engagement. Human losses were still light compared to Vortan losses, but every number represented a real person. "Admiral, you should rest," Kim said gently. "How many today?" Sarah asked without looking up. 43 wounded, 7 killed. Vortan losses were over 2,000. Sarah closed her eyes. "I keep thinking about the treaty signing." Emperor Kralik smiled when he signed it. "I thought it meant he was sincere. I was so naive." "You weren't naive," Kim said. "You gave them every chance for peace. They chose this war, not you. You tried for 15 years. And 3 million people paid the price for my faith in diplomacy," Sarah said bitterly. 60,000, Kim corrected. "Remember? We evacuated most of them, and those 60,000 volunteers knew what they were doing. They died so humanity would survive. Now you're making sure their sacrifice means something." Sarah looked at her aide. Kim had been with her for 10 years, first as a diplomatic assistant, now as a military aide. She was right. The volunteers at those colonies had known they might die. They had stayed anyway to maintain the deception and buy time for humanity. "The next target is New Vortex," Sarah said, looking at her tactical display. "It's one of their major military production centers. If we take it, we cut off a quarter of their warship manufacturing." "Intelligence reports say it's heavily defended," Kim warned. 3 full fleets guard the system." "Then we'll use 4 fleets to take it," Sarah replied. "Send orders to Admiral Jackson and Admiral Webb. We coordinate the attack in 72 hours. The battle for New Vortex became the largest space engagement in modern galactic history. 1,200 ships clashed in orbit around the industrial world. The Vortans fought with desperate courage, knowing that losing the system would cripple their war effort. Sarah commanded from the Relentless, coordinating 4 human fleets in a complex dance of warfare. The Vortans tried to use their traditional tactics, but humans had studied their methods for decades. Every move the Vortans made, humanity had a counter. The battle lasted 16 hours. Human forces used tactics the Vortans had never encountered. Some ships would fake damage and retreat, drawing Vortan vessels into ambushes. Others would coordinate their fire on single targets, overwhelming shields through concentrated attacks. Still others used psychological warfare, broadcasting fake communications to create confusion. When it ended, New Vortex belonged to humanity. The Vortan defenders had lost 2/3 of their forces. Human casualties were significant too, the worst they had suffered so far, but they had achieved their objective. News of New Vortex's fall shocked the galaxy. The impossible had happened again. Not only could humanity fight the Vortans, they could win major victories against them. Species that had been conquered by the Vortans centuries ago began to whisper about rebellion. The Vortan Empire, which had seemed eternal, suddenly looked vulnerable. In the Vortan capital, Emperor Kralik faced a crisis. His generals argued constantly. Some wanted to pull back forces and defend core territories. Others demanded a massive counterattack to restore Vortan pride. His civilian advisors warned that the economy was straining under the cost of the war. "We must negotiate," one advisor said. "The humans are proving stronger than expected. Perhaps we can offer reparations and avoid further losses." Kralik turned on him with fury. "Negotiate? Surrender to primitives who have been in space for barely 2 centuries? Never. The Vortan Empire does not bow to inferiors. But Majesty, the advisor persisted, we have already lost 15% of our fleet. Our production centers are under attack. Other species are watching. If we appear weak, silence, Krolix roared. We are not weak. We will gather our full might and crush these humans once and for all. Send orders to every fleet. They will converge on human space and destroy everything. His generals exchanged worried looks but said nothing. They all knew the Emperor's pride would not allow him to admit mistake. 3 weeks after the Battle of New Vortax, Sarah received intelligence that changed everything. Vortan forces were gathering for a massive assault. They were pulling ships from across their empire, creating a fleet larger than anything seen in centuries. Their target was Earth itself. Sarah called an emergency meeting of all human commanders. The holographic conference showed dozens of admirals and generals from across human space. They're coming for Earth, Sarah said simply. Every major Vortan fleet is moving toward our home system. Intelligence estimates 7,000 warships. The room fell silent. Even with all their preparations, humanity's entire fleet numbered only 1,200 ships. They were outnumbered 6-1. General Webb spoke first. We can defend. Earth's orbital defenses are the strongest in human space. With the home fleet and proper positioning, we can hold them off. Hold them off for how long? Admiral Jackson asked. They can afford to take losses. They have reserves. We don't. Sarah looked at the tactical display showing Vortan fleet movements. They would arrive at Earth in 3 weeks. She had 3 weeks to make a decision that would determine humanity's fate. We won't defend, Sarah said finally. The commanders stared at her in shock. We've been reacting to them, Sarah continued. They attacked our colonies, so we attacked their military bases. They're attacking Earth, so they expect us to defend it. Instead, we're going to attack Vortan Prime itself. Their homeworld? General Webb looked stunned. Sarah, that's suicide. Their defenses there are impregnable. No, Sarah said firmly. Their defenses were impregnable, but they've pulled most of their ships away to attack us. Intelligence reports that Vortan Prime currently has only light defensive forces. They never imagined we would dare strike at their heart. Admiral Jackson smiled slowly. While they're heading to Earth, we hit their capital. Force them to turn around or watch their homeworld fall. It's bold. It's insane, another commander muttered. Maybe, Sarah agreed. But we've been playing it safe with military targets. It's time to show Emperor Krolix that his actions have personal consequences. He destroyed 3 of our colonies. Now we threaten his throne. The vote was close, but ultimately the commanders agreed. Humanity would take its entire fleet and strike at the heart of the Vortan Empire. It was a gamble that could win the war or destroy humanity completely. The human fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Vortan Prime system. Sarah stood on the bridge of the Relentless, watching her tactical display as it populated with contacts. The Vortan homeworld orbited a large yellow star, surrounded by defensive stations and shipyards that had been built over 1,000 years. Reading approximately 400 defensive platforms, the sensor officer reported. 200 warships in system, mostly patrol vessels. The main defense fleet is not present. Captain Rodriguez whistled softly. They really did send everything to attack Earth. Their home system is practically naked. Sarah felt no satisfaction at being right. This gamble could still fail in a dozen ways. Open a channel to Emperor Krolix. It's time to give him a choice. Within minutes, the Emperor's face appeared on the main screen. His yellow eyes blazed with fury and something else. Surprise. He had not expected humans to strike here. Ambassador Chen, he said, his voice dripping with contempt. Or should I say Admiral Chen, I see you have finally revealed your true face. You come to my home world while I am not present. How cowardly. You attacked 3 of our colonies with orbital bombardment, Sarah replied calmly. You killed thousands of people who had no way to defend themselves. Do not lecture me about cowardice. Those were legitimate military targets, Krolix growled. They were farms and trading stations, Sarah said. But if you want to call them military targets, then this is a military target too. She gestured at the planet behind her on the display. Vortan Prime, your home, your throne, your people. The Emperor's scales seemed to darken with rage. You dare threaten my world? My fleet will arrive at Earth within days. They will reduce your home planet to ash. Your people will be extinct. Perhaps, Sarah acknowledged. But your fleet is 3 weeks away from turning back. In 3 weeks we will control Vortan Prime. Your throne will be empty. Your people will be under our governance. Your empire will be leaderless. Is that really worth destroying Earth? For a long moment, Kralik said nothing. Sarah could see the calculations happening behind those alien eyes. His pride fought against his strategic mind. You would not dare attack a civilian population, Kralik said finally. Your precious human morality would not allow it. You're right, Sarah agreed. We won't bombard your world the way you bombarded ours. But we will invade it. We will occupy your capital city. We will dismantle your war machine piece by piece. And we will do it while broadcasting every moment to the entire galaxy. She leaned forward. This is your choice, Emperor. Turn your fleet around and negotiate an end to this war, or continue to Earth and lose everything that matters to your empire. Either way, your attack on our colonies will cost you dearly. You ask me to choose between my pride and my throne, Kralik said slowly. No, Sarah corrected. I'm asking you to choose between pointless revenge and the survival of your empire. You already lost this war when you underestimated humanity. Now you just have to decide how much more you're willing to lose before you admit it. The transmission ended. Kralik's face disappeared from the screen. Sarah turned to her officers. Begin the assault. Target the defense platforms first. Avoid civilian structures. I want this done as cleanly as possible. The Battle of Vorten Prime began. Human ships moved in coordinated groups, systematically destroying the defensive platforms. The Vorten defenders fought bravely, but they were overwhelmed by numbers and superior tactics. Within 6 hours, the orbital defenses were shattered. Sarah's ground forces prepared to land on the planet itself. Marines in armored suits loaded into transport ships. They would strike at military installations and government buildings, avoiding civilian areas as much as possible. But even as the battle raged, Sarah knew the real fight was happening in deep space. Emperor Kralik had to make his decision. Would he save his home or pursue his revenge? Across the galaxy, other species watched with fascination. The Galactic Council broadcasted emergency sessions, but everyone knew their words meant nothing now. This was a contest of wills between two powers, and only one would emerge dominant. Some species began making their own calculations. The Quill Collective quietly moved their fleets toward former Vortan territory, ready to claim systems if the Empire fell. The methane breathers sent secret messages to human commanders, offering intelligence about Vortan positions. Dozens of species that the Vortans had conquered or intimidated began to see opportunity in the Empire's weakness. On Vortan Prime, the population watched in fear as human ships filled their sky. For 1,000 years, the Vortan people had believed themselves invincible. They had conquered others, never imagining that someone might conquer them. Now their emperor was far away and aliens occupied their orbit. Sarah received reports that some Vortan military commanders on the planet wanted to surrender. Others prepared for a ground war. The planet was divided, uncertain, and afraid. 2 days after the battle began, Sarah received the message she had been waiting for. Emperor Kralik appeared on her screen again. This time his posture was different. He still radiated authority, but the absolute confidence was gone. Admiral Chen, he said formally, my fleet is returning to defend Vortan Prime. We will arrive in 21 days. I propose we use that time to negotiate terms for ending this conflict. Sarah felt relief flood through her, but she kept her expression neutral. I agree, but negotiations will happen here, in orbit of Vortan Prime, where the entire galaxy can watch. And you will come in person. Unacceptable, Kralik snapped. I will not present myself as a supplicant in my own capital. Then there's nothing to negotiate, Sarah said. By the time your fleet arrives, we will have complete control of this planet. You can try to take it back, but the cost will be millions of Vortan civilian lives caught in the fighting. Is that what you want? The Emperor's jaw worked silently for a moment. Finally, he spoke through what looked like physical pain. I will come, but you will guarantee my safety and the safety of my delegation. Agreed, Sarah said. We will meet on neutral ground. There's a trading station at the edge of this system. We will both come with minimal escorts. The Galactic Council can provide security if it makes you feel better. The negotiations took 3 weeks. Sarah sat across a table from Emperor Kralik on a small station, while their fleets faced each other across the Vortan system. Representatives from the Galactic Council attended as witnesses, but everyone knew they were just observers. This was between humanity and the Vortan Empire. The terms were harsh. The Vortans would pay reparations for the destroyed colonies. They would submit to war crimes trials for those who planned and executed the attacks. They would reduce their military by half and allow human observers to ensure compliance. Most painfully for Kralix, he would publicly acknowledge human sovereignty over territories the Vortans had claimed. "These terms are humiliating," Kralix said during one session. "You are asking me to dismantle an empire that has existed for millennia." "You dismantled it yourself when you chose war over peace," Sarah replied. "I spent 15 years building a treaty that would have let your empire exist with honor. You destroyed that treaty. These are the consequences." Kralix glared at her with hatred, but he also knew he had no choice. His empire was broken. His military was scattered. His homeworld was occupied. Pride had cost him everything. But even as Sarah negotiated, she struggled internally. She had won. Humanity was safe. The Vortan threat was ended. So why did she feel empty instead of triumphant? One evening, she walked through the station's observation deck alone. Captain Rodriguez found her there, staring out at the stars. "You did it, Admiral," he said. "You saved humanity. You defeated an empire that had conquered for 1,000 years. At what cost?" Sarah asked quietly. "How many died in this war?" "Humans and Vortans both. And for what? Because one emperor's pride was more important than peace." "That's not on you," Rodriguez said firmly. "You tried peace. You gave them every chance." Sarah turned to face him. "Did I? Or did I lie to them for 15 years while we prepared for war? We pretended to be weak while building weapons. Were we ever really interested in peace, or was the treaty just buying time until we were ready to fight?" Rodriguez considered this carefully. "Both can be true. We genuinely wanted peace, but we also knew we needed to be ready if peace failed. That's not dishonest. That's realistic, maybe," Sarah said. "But I look at Kralix sitting across from me at those negotiations, and I see a broken leader who gambled everything and lost. Part of me hates him for what he did, but part of me wonders if we're really that different. We both used deception. We both built weapons in secret. The only difference is that we won. The difference is that we never attacked first," Rodriguez corrected. "We defended ourselves. That matters." Sarah wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that humanity's actions were justified, that the thousands who died had died for a good reason, but war had a way of making everything complicated. The final negotiation session came 3 weeks after it started. The terms were signed by both sides. Emperor Kralix stood and looked at Sarah with eyes that burned with controlled fury. "You have your victory, Admiral Chen," he said formally. "But know this. The Vortan people have long memories. This humiliation will not be forgotten." "Good," Sarah replied. "Remember it well. Remember what happens when you chose Sarah's return to Earth should have been a celebration. Parades waited in the streets of major cities. Politicians prepared speeches praising humanity's great victory. The military planned ceremonies to honor the fallen and recognize the heroes. But as the Relentless approached Earth orbit, Sarah felt none of the joy she should have felt. She sat in her quarters, looking at reports from across the galaxy. The Vortan Empire was fragmenting. Some provinces were declaring independence. Others fought among themselves for power. The careful balance of galactic politics that had existed for centuries was collapsing. Captain Rodriguez knocked on her door. "Admiral, we're entering Earth orbit. The President wants to speak with you before we land." Sarah nodded and activated her communication console. President Martinez appeared on the screen, her face showing both pride and concern. "Admiral Chen," the President said formally, "on behalf of Earth and all human colonies, I thank you for your service. You have secured humanity's future in the galaxy." "Thank you, Madam President," Sarah replied automatically. Martinez studied her face. "But you don't look like someone who just won a war. What's wrong?" Sarah hesitated, then decided on honesty. "I'm not sure we won anything. We defeated the Vortans, yes, but I see reports of chaos spreading across their former territory. Species fighting over systems the Vortans used to control. The Galactic Council is weaker than ever, and dozens of species now fear humanity the way they used to fear the Vortans." "You're worried we've become what we fought against," Martinez said quietly. "Haven't we?" Sarah asked. "We spent 200 years pretending to be peaceful while building weapons. We presented ourselves as idealists while planning for war. And when war came, we were just as brutal and efficient as any empire." The president considered this. The difference is that we wanted peace. We genuinely tried for 15 years to make the treaty work. The Vortans chose violence. We just responded to it. With overwhelming force, Sarah pointed out. We destroyed their fleets, occupied their homeworld, and humiliated their emperor. Yes, they struck first. But our response went beyond defense. It became conquest. Martinez leaned forward. What would you have done differently? Sarah opened her mouth to answer, then closed it. That was the question that haunted her. What should she have done when the Vortans killed 60,000 people? Negotiated while they continued attacking? Defended passively while they grew bolder? Every option had seemed wrong except the one she chose. I don't know, Sarah admitted. Maybe there was no right answer. Maybe that's just the nature of war. But I think I need to step away from all of this for a while. You're resigning? Martinez asked, surprised. I'm retiring, Sarah corrected. For real this time. I spent 15 years as a diplomat and then became a military commander again. I think it's time I actually become a civilian for once in my life. The president looked disappointed but understanding. Where will you go? I don't know yet, Sarah said. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere I can think about what we've done and what it means. 3 months later, Sarah lived on a small colony world called Haven's Rest. It was a farming community, one of the first human settlements established after first contact. The people here grew crops and raised animals and lived simple lives far from the politics of Earth or the chaos of the wider galaxy. She had purchased a small house on the edge of the main settlement, with land that she used to maintain a memorial garden. Every day she worked in the soil, planting flowers and caring for trees. Carved stones marked the names of every human who had died in the war. 60,000 from the colonies, 3,000 from the military campaigns. Each one represented a real person with families and dreams. The colonists left her alone mostly, respecting her privacy. They knew who she was, but they did not treat her as a war hero or military leader. To them, she was just Sarah, the quiet woman who tended the memorial garden. One afternoon, 6 months after the war ended, a shuttle landed near her property. Sarah looked up from her gardening to see a young woman approaching. She wore the uniform of Earth's diplomatic service, and she looked both nervous and determined. Admiral Chen? The woman asked. Just Sarah, she replied, brushing dirt from her hands. I'm not an admiral anymore. I'm Ambassador Lee, the woman introduced herself. I've been assigned to negotiate with the Kelorn Union. They're a species near former Vortan territory that's been expanding aggressively. They've made threats against 3 smaller species, and the Galactic Council has asked humanity to help mediate. Sarah felt a familiar weight settle on her shoulders. And you came here for advice? Yes, Lee admitted. The Kelorn leaders are testing us. They've heard about what happened with the Vortans, and they're trying to figure out if we'll fight again, or if we're back to being peaceful diplomats. I don't know what to tell them. Sarah gestured for Lee to sit on a bench near the garden. They sat together, looking at the memorial stones. What do you know about the Kelorn? Sarah asked. They're aggressive, but not stupid, Lee replied. They respect strength, but also understand cooperation. They're watching to see if humanity is going to become a new empire, or if the war with the Vortans was an exception. And what do you think? Sarah asked. Lee took a breath. I think humanity has changed. We revealed our military strength, and now everyone knows we're not weak. But I also think we meant what we said about wanting peace. The question is whether we can be both. Can we be strong enough to defend ourselves but peaceful enough to be trusted? Sarah looked at the memorial stones. Each name represented someone who had died because peace failed. Some had died in the initial Vortan attack. Others had died in the war that followed. All of them had paid the price for decisions made by leaders like her. Here's what I learned, Sarah said slowly. Peace is always the goal. Always. But peace without strength is just waiting to be victimized. The mistake we made for 200 years was pretending we had to choose between being peaceful and being strong. We don't. She turned to face Lee directly. Tell the Kelorn that humanity will defend any species threatened by aggression. not just human colonies, but any species. Make it clear that we have the strength to back up our words, but also make it clear that we would rather negotiate than fight. Give them the choice and respect whatever choice they make. And if they choose violence, Lee asked. Then we respond with overwhelming force, quickly and decisively, Sarah said. But we don't conquer, we don't humiliate. We defend, we stop the aggression, and then we offer peace again. The goal is security for everyone, not building our own empire. Lee nodded slowly. That's a difficult balance to maintain. Everything worth doing is difficult, Sarah replied. We spent 200 years building weapons while pretending to be weak. That was dishonest, and it almost cost us everything. Now we need to be honest. Yes, we're strong. Yes, we'll fight if necessary, but we genuinely want cooperation and peace. That's the message you need to deliver. The young ambassador stood. Thank you, I understand now. One more thing, Sarah said. Never let them mistake patience for weakness. We tried kindness with the Vortans for 15 years. When they answered with genocide, we showed them what humanity really is. Just remember that fury has a price. Make sure it's one you're willing to pay. Lee looked at the memorial stones. Did we pay too much? Sarah considered the question for a long time. I don't know. Sometimes I think we paid exactly what was necessary to survive. Other times I wonder if there was a better way, but the 60,000 who died in those colonies didn't have the luxury of choosing. They died so the rest of humanity could live. The best we can do is make sure their sacrifice meant something. After Lee left, Sarah returned to her garden. She worked until sunset, pulling weeds and watering the flowers that grew around the memorial stones. This had become her new mission, not commanding fleets or negotiating treaties, but remembering, making sure that the cost of war was never forgotten. News continued to reach Haven's Rest from the wider galaxy. The Galactic Council had reformed, with humanity as a permanent member. The Vortan Empire had split into 6 independent states, none of which posed a serious threat. Several species that had been conquered by the Vortans were now free and rebuilding. Some reports were troubling. A few species saw humanity's victory as an invitation to their own aggression. Others feared humanity too much and avoided contact. The galaxy was still adjusting to the new balance of power, but other reports gave Sarah hope. The Kelorn Union had agreed to negotiate with Ambassador Lee. 3 species that had been on the verge of war chose diplomacy after humanity offered to mediate. The galaxy was learning that strength and peace were not opposites. A year after the war ended, Sarah received a final visitor. General Webb, now retired himself, came to Haven's Rest. They sat together in the memorial garden, 2 old soldiers who had spent their lives preparing for war while hoping for peace. The Vortan Empire is officially dead, Webb said. The last holdouts surrendered yesterday. What was once the greatest military power in the galaxy is now just history. How do you feel about that? Sarah asked. Webb was quiet for a moment. Relieved, sad, guilty, proud, all of it at once. We did what we had to do, but that doesn't make it feel good. No, Sarah A.